Well, thanks so much for joining me. I know Solomia from YRB was like, you got to talk to Mark Funk and have him on your show. We met at, or I guess I've met you a couple times, but she brought you up to me at Broker Carrier Summit. I was like, you got to meet Mark and have him on here. And so thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, and we always see each other at all these different conferences, so it's nice to
Yeah.
finally sit down and have a conversation. And as far as Solomia, she's a great person. I love YRB too. So
I know, me too. I'm a huge fan. That's awesome.
yeah,
Well, why don't we start off kind of you introduce yourself, give a little bit about your background.
yeah, sure. So Mark Funk with SPI Logistics. I serve as the director of Carrier Procurement here, and I've been with SPI now going on about 4 years. Prior to that, I did a stint at R&L Global. That's the truckload division, the brokerage division of R&L Carriers, the green and white trucks. I was there for about 3 years. And then
Mhm.
prior to that, I was with a company called Total Quality Logistics. So don't throw anything at me. I was there for about 10 years as the director of carrier operations, which was, I still have a lot of people there that I know and I'm good friends with. And then prior to that, I was on the shipper side. So I worked at Sara Lee U.S. Foods, and I was over the carrier procurement, claims, that type of area there.
Mm.
And I guess I worked there for about 5 or 6 years. And then prior to that, I would actually travel internationally for another company and help set up logistics and whatnot at those.
So you've been around the block a time or two on logistics. So you've seen full cycles of the ups and downs and all that stuff. And even at SPI, really you started in the height of all the cargo theft, right?
Yeah, gosh,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, that was a rough time. It still is a rough time for a lot of people going through it, but
Yeah.
I think a lot of the technology industry is kind of catching up, and that's the thing. You catch up, and then they find another way, and then you got to
Hmm.
catch up. It's still rampant in the industry.
Yeah, definitely. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of people that aren't doing anything or they're only relying on tech, which I'm a big advocate on. You can't just be fully tech. Tech's great and it helps a lot, helps automate a lot, helps gives you a lot of like insight to your face, but it's not always black and white. It's not at all
Yeah,
black and white, really, is how I should say it.
it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. And you're right. I mean, tech helps. It does, because it catches up, but because you've been around getting on the phone and actually talking to the carrier and understanding what's going on and getting that feel for it. And that really speaks volumes. It does.
Yeah, definitely. So what have been, I guess, some of the biggest changes that you have made within your like organization on vetting? Do you guys mainly have like your or your, sales team and then it hits compliance on and a certain level, or is everybody trained up on all the cargo theft, or how does your organization kind of run on everything?
Yeah, yeah. So everybody is probably tired of hearing about cargo theft at SPI. I mean, we talk about it all the time. We have weekly newsletters that go out. We actually had Scott Cornell come in and give a
Oh, cool.
presentation to all of our agents at our yearly event. So a little bit about SPI. We're an agent-based freight brokerage. So the
Okay.
agents come on, they have their own book of business, but then what they do is they run under our MC and they use our tech stack and whatnot. So we have a corporate
Hmm.
compliance team. And some of the biggest changes that I'm going to say from that standpoint, it was one, the adoption of Highway. We went from our old provider to Highway, and that was a little bit rough going through that transition because it was a little bit more data that we were able to have access to, which allowed us to have a better look at our carrier pool and what we were doing. But then as that transitions over time, it's more than just one provider. So we use
Yeah.
Highway, we use Carrier Sure, obviously Carrier 411. We use a lot of different things. We also have data pulls that we'll pull in from different providers in the industry to get everything together. So our corporate compliance team will vet the carriers and say these carriers are approved or rejected, or if there's a carrier that's on the bubble and needs an additional review, the agents will service that, and then we have a team that handles it.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, kind of like what you mentioned, like the tech, you're having to have so many different things now, especially if you're a larger company, like you're really needing to have dip into a little bit of everything because everybody does something a little bit differently, or
Yeah,
they're doing a little like even like if they're doing something different right now, they're always innovating too. Like I know on our side, like all I pretty much I meet with them 3 times a week, our development team, and all we talk about is okay, how do we stay ahead? I just heard this new story and like, well, how do we do things differently? And really, it is trying to be innovative enough to where you're ahead of everybody. And that's difficult to do for tech. So having multiple of them, it seems like that's kind of the way to go for now. I'm hoping, it's not having to be that like that, but it's rough out there.
I don't see it going away. I really
Yeah.
don't. And one of the challenges we faced early on with having all of these different tech and vendors and receiving all these data signals. Our agent would look at highway, and I'm not slamming highway because I'm a big highway guy, but when you look at it, there's just so much information, and if
Yeah.
everything's important, nothing's important, right? And the same with Carrier. Sure, they got a lot of data, and then you got Carrier 411 and whatnot. But we got a pretty active tech team here.
Yeah.
And what the tech team was able to do was take all of those data signals, and we scored those data signals as far as the level of importance, right?
Hmm.
And so an agent now can type in an MC, and again, you can't rely on tech for everything. I get that,
Right.
but there are some certain outliers, and if the score is too high or too low, I'm sorry, then right away the agent will get a thumbs down. Hey, this is just
Yeah.
not a carrier currently that we're going to be able to improve. But if the score's within a range of being acceptable, then they can move forward that transaction. If a carrier has if they're questioning about why they can't do business with us, they can reach out to our compliance team and we'll work with them to try to get it resolved.
Yeah, because I think the biggest thing is, and I talk about this all the time, but really cargo theft and fraud is 1% of all the logistics transaction. Obviously, it's a big chunk of change. And I know that, like, not trying to downplay it, but it really is only 1%. And so the 99%, you don't want to limit your capacity. And that there's a big fine line between getting too strict on things and,
Yeah.
like you said, not having anything or having way too many red flags where your team gets overwhelmed and they're like, well, how do I even move on from here? So I think there's definitely a way of doing it. Like, I know I'm big on, I'm like, if there is a red flag, what's the next steps on how to vet it? And then most of the time, by the time you get to, step 3, you're knowing at that point, good or bad. You may have like 5 steps, but usually by like step 3, you're like, this is not feeling right. Or, yeah, everything's starting to check out. They've made all the way through 5. Okay, we're good to go. So there's definitely a process in place. Are you
Yeah.
kind of seeing the same thing on your end?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head too, right? When you said, "Hey, is it feeling right?" And I'm a big
Hmm.
believer in that. If it doesn't feel right, then you know what? Let's just go ahead and say at this point in time, we're not going to be able to transact. But then you go forward. But again, it's a lot of times you got to pick up the phone, you got to talk to them. Here's what's going on, and
Hmm.
you learn a lot of different things. You really do.
Yeah,
For
having to
the
stay ahead of it.
days, yeah, the days of picking up the phone and it's an owner operator, but then you hear a call center in the background. Those are there's a lot of technology now that's on the other side of the fence for potential bad actors where they can get that noise and that distraction out. So you got to kind of pry a little bit.
Yeah, what's your take on, so you just mentioned, like, having the call center in the background, so the dispatch service. So 2 things, what's your take on, like, a dispatch service, and then what's your take on if they're an out of seas dispatch service? Or,
Yeah.
you find out they are.
Yeah, so we don't use dispatch services. We just don't.
Gotcha.
We've had some experience in the past where we just don't think that's appropriate for our business model. I'm not saying anything bad against dispatching services. They may be great for certain people in certain situations, but for us, we don't use them. And
Yeah.
if it's an overseas contact, then that's something that we also don't partake in. We that's a flag for us. Again, they may be great individuals and they may be just, but for us and our risk tolerance level, it's just not there.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I think what I wish on dispatching services is that they did have their own, which I'm hoping the government changes this, where they do have their own entity, and it's not necessarily a broker, but it's not necessarily a carrier. It is just strictly like a dispatching service or a different word for it. Because I think there should be a way that we can vet those, because there are definitely plenty of great dispatching
Sure.
services. And really legally, like, I actually just got into like a big tiff with one because we blocked them out of our system, and they're like basically going off on me about it, which that's flag number 1. You keep fighting me on it.
Right.
Flag number 2 was, I'm like, hey, if you have a W-2, 1099, or you have power of attorney, like, send it over and then we can go from there, right? Because that means you're legally able to sign contracts on behalf of the carrier. And they couldn't, or they provided a power of attorney, but it wasn't signed or notarized, excuse me, it wasn't notarized. And I'm like, this is basically for nothing. And they're like, well, the FMCSA doesn't specify it needs to be notarized. So I actually reached out to FMCSA and I'm like, hey, technically you guys don't have that say yet, like, needs to be notarized or whatever. And they clarified and said, yeah, we need to update some things, but it should be on whatever state they're registered in. It's their power of attorney process. Cause some of them you have to go file it through the actual court legal system. Some of them you just need a notary. Anyways, so long story short, there's a lot in there, but I think if we were to have in the dispatch service, if we were to able to have a clear identifier of it, and then from there, the dispatching services that are truly honest, kind of going that forefront and saying, hey, I'm a dispatch service. This is my paperwork saying that I can sign the contract. Or, hey, I don't handle the contracts because the owner operator does. I just help find the loads. So I'm going to patch you over to the owner operator who's going to actually send the contract over, blah, blah, blah. Like I think even on the dispatching services, the legitimate ones, there's a way to make it where, hey, I'm a legitimate one and kind of be in forefront on that. But that's a slippery slope. So,
It is. It is. And to your point, the legitimate ones, if the legitimate ones could get together and petition or create some type of standard right through was it TAPA or whatnot, maybe reach out to them and create a standard. You know how
yeah,
TAPA's got the standard for the brokers and shippers and all those types. If they could do something like that, that might help them out. But
right.
the issue that we face, from a compliance perspective, if we're going to be down to the point where we're looking at documents and we're trying to determine the validity of that, I don't know about you, but I've been on the stand before and then, okay, so wait a minute, what type of training have you had in understanding this? So you're an expert? Well, no. Well, then how can you make that decision?
Yeah, true. Good
It, it's
point.
just, it's
Good
just, oh,
point.
I've been there. It's just better to move on and say, you know what, let's look somewhere else.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I wonder if there's a way to even like on like a highway, my care portal, RMIS, whatever, like a way that we could figure out a way to we keep track of that and then I don't know, maybe that's like the next realm of
It's a
how you
gap.
handle
It's a
things.
gap in the industry. It
It
really
is.
is because I think there are some legitimate dispatching service, and I think some owner operators who may not have the time or let's just say time. They don't have the time to
Mhm.
negotiate rates or find loads or whatnot, or they're just starting up and they lean on these dispatch services. So that's a gap that I think we're missing in the industry. You
Yeah,
know,
I agree. Well, and even like so 10th Street, like their software, they actually like have house all the stuff. So I wonder even if there's a way to integrate with them. I'm just kind of thinking out loud too, but the way to
sure,
integrate with them because then we could even see like if it's the owner operator, their lease agreement and kind of all that stuff and have it housed in one spot, but have it shared. Anyways, these are ideas because you don't want to limit those guys either, but because sometimes they're great. Like I said, they're great
sure.
people, but like you said, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. So how do you make it where it's a quick yes, and, being able to go back and prove it with paperwork, but like you said, you're not legally trained on that.
Right. So you
Yeah,
can you can interpret all these documents. You've been trained. You're an expert. Well, no, I'm not saying all that. Okay, then how can you
right.
make that decision?
Yeah.
But to your point, I mean, how would you do that? I think you get some of the key brokers maybe in the industry together and say, what
Mhm.
would we want from a dispatching service? How would we validate it? How do we validate it? And then you put those standards in place and you get some of the legitimate dispatching services to sign on, then you start that movement.
Right.
And again, I hate to keep, touting, TAPA, but that's another way to
No,
do that.
they're good at that. Yeah.
They are.
No,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So what has been some, like, crazy things that you guys have seen? I'm sure you have all sorts of stories, but I guess anything to share I don't wanna give away all the secrets to all the bad guys, but I guess it's nice to hear, like, if someone's tuning in and they're like, "Oh, I'm dealing with this," just to know, like, "Oh, I dealt with a similar situation." Because it's funny, I went to whenever we were at the Broker Carrier Summit, I did a thing and somebody was like, "Oh, I had a load double broker, they cross-docked or whatever," and we're like,
Oh, yeah.
"Just 2 load?" I was like, "Well, just 1 load? You've only had 1 load do that? Congratulations, like, welcome to logistics." So, anyways, but yeah,
That's
so if you
that's
wanna
a
share
slow
whatever
Monday,
stories
right?
Yeah, right,
So,
exactly.
an experience that we've encountered before, we were shipping a load and we had a tracking device in the load because it's a high theft commodity. And we also had the driver set up on a tracking app, right? We all know those can be spoofed. And the driver tracking app was showing, pinging that he was en route, but the tracking device in the load was not, right?
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you get to a point, it's like, okay, well, they spoofed it, they lied.
Mhm.
And, we'd reach out to them and, "Oh, hey, yeah, we're on time, we're this, and the driver's location's this." We didn't let them know that, we actually had the tracking device in the trailer. We were able
Yeah.
to contact the authorities and track it down, and, it ended up in, go figure, Southern California and whatnot, but,
Yeah. Of
so
course.
yeah, well, it happens.
Yeah.
But we were able to recover the load and whatnot, but, the spoofing that some of these bad actors can do, it's amazing. If we had just relied
Okay.
upon a tracking app,
You would have no idea. Yeah.
you'd have no
They
idea.
probably would
Yeah.
have faked a breakdown right before delivery
Well,
and
that
then
always
got
happens,
more
right?
time
It's
and of
broke
course.
down, but here's a picture of a truck in the shop, and it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
typical, right?
Definitely. Yeah, I think the spoofing, I know you're a YRB customer too, so, like, even the spoofing on the phone calls, calling in, like, acting like their
Sure.
FMCSA phone numbers, because even on our end in customer service, like, we use YRB actually because that happens all the time, posing as a carrier, calling in, trying to get into our system, and it was to the point where, like, our customer service, like, we can't even handle the volume of how many calls we're getting spoofed. So the spoofing has gotten way more, like, I've even heard of them spoofing, like, grabbing text messages, like,
Oh,
rerouting. I'm
sure.
like, "How could they even do that?"
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like with the two-factor authentication, that's gonna get to where that's, like, too hard to really rely on as well. It's
Well,
crazy.
some of the crazier scenarios that I've seen. So if you have somebody dispatching service or somebody who used to work for you as a carrier and they have access to your Gmail account, freight at gmail.com or whatever. So maybe they leave your company and the carrier doesn't change their password.
Right.
Now that person goes in and they start booking loads under your MC and they set up a rule in your account to go ahead, anything that comes from this person, forward it to this email, then delete it. So
Yeah.
you as a carrier, you don't even know that's happening. It comes in,
Mhm.
goes out, and then deletes it. And then what they've done is they've pretty much just taken your email, spoofed your identity, not spoofed your identity, but stole your identity,
Yeah.
and then they steal the load. Back in the day, you used to have, and I'm sure you probably can still now, you could download a spoofing app, and you
Right.
can make your number appear as anything. And one of the big scams, and I'm going back probably 4 or 5 years, and I'm sure it happens now with brokers who maybe isn't as advanced as what they could be, where they call in and they say, I'm with Funk Trucking, right? And I just want to make sure that our contract is current. I got one dated on this date. Can you just check that for me?
Yeah.
And they start that conversation. Oh, okay, yeah, no, I'm the new contact. The old person left, and they get their name and number as far as a contact, and then they're in the system. And then
Yeah.
they call right in, they book the load, and it's gone.
Right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting to say too, because that it's hard because that could be legitimately, but I think following up with that phone call, calling the FMCSA phone number, "Hey, I just got this call confirming that
Yep.
this is right." It does take time, but, like, that couple seconds in a call can really save you tons of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned, like, the pallet, tracking. And did your customer proactively do that, or is that, like, a conversation that you guys had with the customer, like, "Hey, because this is high value, we need you to do this and this,"
Yeah,
or
so
how
we
did
had a
that work?
conversation, said because of this high value, this commodity is high theft, high risk. Here's the cost, and we baked that into the rate. Everybody agreed on it, and then it worked out. So that was a good thing. It doesn't always end like that.
Right.
At a prior company, we had a customer who refused to pay the $36 or 30, what is something trivial
Yeah.
for a tracking device, and the load was gone.
Right.
Um,
Then police cannot find it. Like the you met the CHP guys at the Carrier show,
correct. Yep.
one too, and like those guys, they're like, if you want us to high speed get this before it's sold and put on another trailer and is put on in the port and whatever, like it's gone. You should have, especially on high value, have something hidden inside the device so we can find somewhere at least last location. Yeah.
Yeah. That's big, and, they even have detectors, though, the bad actors they have
Yeah.
detectors, and they can find that too, so if you can hide it, in different places, maybe more than one, and
Hmm.
put it to where it's kinda hard to get through, a lot of times they'll just leave it on the side of the road and go get another trailer somewhere else, unless it's their trailer. They probably stole
Right.
that trailer anyway.
Right. Most of the time, that's usually what happens. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny. I was talking to Gen Logs, and they were saying a lot of the
Mhm.
larger fleets, they have their trailers stolen like all the time, and they don't even know. They have no idea until it ends up on like a police report, and then they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that was gone." And so with have like the bigger fleets are like signing up with Gen Logs and then doing like monthly checks on their trailers, or I think they have it like tagged where like it will like show if these trailers are sitting and you see it moving on Gen Logs,
Yeah.
like it flags it.
This is supposed to be a
Yeah.
deactivated or inactive trailer, so
Right.
why is it showing up on my report? Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. It's
Absolutely.
so the tech's awesome because it can do so many things like that. At the same time, bad guys can do just as much on their end and change like a trailer number. Like how easy is it to change a trailer number whenever they're especially like
Right.
in detect camera detection.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
just put a different number on the side, just a little placard slapping on top of the trailer, and you got a whole different
Right.
number, just like they do on the door. But I'm hoping with a lot of the attention that's happening on the industry right now from a government perspective,
Yes.
maybe one of the good things could be that we have a tighter control or more strict standards for theft. I mean, you know, the FBI's got a task force now, and that's a new
Huge.
one. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's huge. And then you're also seeing it now with celebrities, right? You know, Shaquille O'Neal's his was it a Porsche or his car was
Yeah.
stolen,
Whatever it
and
was, expensive
yeah,
car.
whatever. It expensive something I'm not
Yeah.
driving,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it was a victim of double brokering, right? A
Yeah.
carrier picked it up, and it was stolen identity supposedly, and they say that they actually caught the person, I think, up in New York just this
Oh,
week,
really?
but the car
That's
is gone. It's
crazy.
overseas. Yeah,
Of course, yeah. Who
it's
knows where
somewhere in
it's
the
at?
Middle
And
East, I think, is what they said.
yeah, and and I think with a car, it's different because that is considered, my God, why can't I think of the word? That is considered grand theft auto. So that
Yeah.
is like a heavier penalty. So that's why a lot of times like so for a long time the auto industry was not hit, like hardly at all. But then I have quite a bit of new customers that are in the auto industry and they're like, yeah, we're now getting hit left and right and they're changing all these things and mainly shipping it overseas like you just said. That's
Hmm.
the biggest way cuz then it's really hard to catch it once it's overseas and like not get for the grand theft. So it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, it
But I
is.
agree. I think there's a lot of good things coming.
I think so too. But you know, when you talk about law enforcement and whatnot, and you see it at all these conferences we go to, there's really not that many law enforcement individuals
Yeah.
who are in this field. Because if you call a police department now, and you know, I don't know, pick somewhere in the middle of America, they don't really know how to handle cargo theft. They don't know
Right.
what's involved. And a
Especially
lot of
the
times,
complexity of it.
right?
It's a lot, even for like a new compliance manager to learn all the different tactics, that's a lot. So I can't even imagine like a police officer having to learn the new tactics too, because it's totally different than other crimes from what like the CHP guys told me.
Yeah, yeah. And but I tell you what, a big shout out to CargoNet. Those
Yes.
guys are phenomenal.
Yeah, I
Absolutely
agree.
phenomenal. I love working with them. I mean, I hate to work with them because that means we have an opportunity, right? But,
Yeah.
I really enjoy working. They are top notch. Yeah.
Yeah, them Scott Cornell really made a big difference, and I think, like, they're doing a lot of the like, I think I saw CargoNet was just on Fox News from what I or like a Fox News article or something, and I think getting in front of those big headlines and getting this to be like, "Hey, the reason why a lot of the reason why our consumer goods are so high is because of cargo theft," and, like, I know my grandparents don't know that, you know what I mean?
No.
Like, they would have
No.
no idea, and part of the voting on this or that, like, they're big in all that, but they don't understand that like, hey, this is such a big deal and this is why you should do this. And so
Yeah.
it's nice our voices are somewhat getting out there. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's new for us. I mean, but,
Hmm.
you know, with that, you know, with government intervention, you know, it opens up a lot of different opportunities as we're seeing with, you know, some of the capacity, I think, capacity
Yeah.
crunch that's starting to happen. And I think will have some, I don't think it's coming because there's a massive amount of freight coming into the industry. I think there's just a lot of capacity as far as drivers
Yeah.
leaving, you know, they're being put out of service or whatnot.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So the English proficiency, that's really the one big one, the non-domicile CDL, those are like kind of the big two, which now government's going back and forth on that because really the post
Yeah.
office couldn't get coverage and so they're having to go back on things. But no, that I think that makes a huge difference on things. So what's I guess what's your take on that and how do you see that kind of affecting us long term if they do go full force on that?
Yeah, well, so with the non-dom right now, there was a lower court who issued a stay on that, right? So right now they can't really enforce that emergency rule change that went into effect in September. And what the basis of that lawsuit where the judge issued that stay was that the FMCSA didn't follow the rule change process that they have in place, where they have to post it out for the comments and go through that process.
Mm.
So they're in the process of going through the appeals, whatnot. They may have to go through that and issue the comments and go through that. But I think, you know, 6 to 9 months, because, you know, just going through the courts, it takes a long time
Yeah.
through the appeals process and, you know, all that. I think that will absolutely come into effect within the next 6 to 9 months. That rule will be reenacted. But, you know, what you're seeing from that perspective, you've got states right now who are saying, hey, listen, we're not going to wait on the outcome of this stay that was put in place.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, Minnesota, I think it was, they stopped issuing non-dom CDLs. You've got some other states who are saying they're not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that's coming. I think that's going to be part of the industry and part of the makeup before this current administration leaves. Whichever party wins the next one, I think that is definitely going to happen
Yeah.
within 2026. So that
Yeah.
rule, I think, is around to stay. And you've got vetting platforms who have openly identified that and adopted that, highway being one of them. And that as brokers, we feel that. I'm sure you
Yeah.
do as well. When you look at the English language proficiency, that's happening nonstop. And I actually saw an
Yeah.
interesting stat. It was earlier this week, I think, and it was something like through October there was. Don't quote me on the exact numbers; these are rough numbers. 6,800 citations issued up through October for language proficiency, but there was something only like 2,000, roughly 2,000, 1,500 out of service orders. Right. So when you
Oh
look at
wow.
that, you think it's like, wait a minute, how can you get a citation for it and then not be put out of service? And what a lot of
Right.
customers, maybe brokers don't understand either. A lot of those citations are issued within 20, 25 miles of the border where there's some exemption where you can come across the border and
Mhm.
deliver these loads from Mexico or from Canada. But you still have to be able to speak English, and that's where they'll get a citation, but they won't be put out of service.
Interesting. So really then it's only the ones who are getting put out of service that's really affecting our whole supply chain, I guess, if they get put out.
Yeah,
And obviously
absolutely.
they're not catching all of them, duh. But
No, no. Yeah, I think Oklahoma had a big operation. This was back in what are we in? It's already December.
I know,
All right,
isn't that
so I think
crazy?
this was back this was back in towards the end of October. Oklahoma had a big operation and they caught I don't know, more than 30, less than 50 drivers that shouldn't be driving. They failed the requirements. And what they found is there was a big backlog of traffic in Texas before it came to the Oklahoma border. They were
Mm.
on a CB saying, hey, they're running these operations. So carriers are actively going around different states
Oh,
because
wow.
of these enforcement
Yeah,
operations,
makes
right?
sense.
So how do you explain that to a customer? Okay, hey, listen, because of these operations, I've got to charge you a little bit more because the carrier doesn't want to go through this state.
And the reason why they don't wanna go through the state is because they probably can't speak English, right?
Right, right.
And to me, like, the non-domicile to me, there's gotta be a way to, like, make it where that capacity is not gone, like, maybe have them do a different type of test as long as they're speaking English, that's a big thing too. Obviously, safety is a big thing, but I think the biggest part with the non-domicile is if they also don't speak any English, like, you kind of double whammy, because a lot of
Hmm.
times those are the guys that are getting caught with, like, the big, like, fatalities and stuff like that. Their English is very poor, so they're not reading signs and things like that. So it's interesting, and especially like you mentioned with vetting platforms, having that shut down a whole carrier because a lot of the really big carriers have those type of violations because they're hiring a ton of drivers, right? So
Hmm.
having those type of capacities shut down or making them seem super bad, I don't think is the right way to do it. I think it's a nice like, hey, heads up, this has happened. Vet the driver that you're talking to, but it's tough to say on a whole carrier level unless if they're at like maybe a one truck show or something, then yeah, that's obviously the driver, but I don't know. What's your take on
It's
that?
hard, isn't it? Right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've seen and spoke to a few different brokers in the industry, and what they've done is they've said, okay, hey, listen, if a carrier has more than X number of power units, then we're going to assume they're a larger carrier, and this is where we're at. But to your point a second ago, if it's a one-person show and
Mhm.
and they have these requirements, and it's something that we're just not going to be able to work with. And then here's something I don't think will ever happen, but when Sean Duffy, the Secretary of Transportation, I think that's his title. He had mentioned probably a month ago that he feels or thinks shippers should be held accountable if they load a
Yeah.
non-domicile, right? So, okay, there's a lot to that, and I mean
Yeah.
that would get challenged, a lot of litigation and things like that. But that's the mindset of where we're going into,
Yeah.
and to your point, if it's a double whammy where they can't speak English and they are non-dom, okay, I can absolutely
Right.
positively say, yeah, that's something because from a safety perspective, you have to be able to
Yes.
see this. What's that sign mean?
Right.
What's it say? You got to know that. But I think all of this is going to be built up into one higher rates because a lot of
Mhm.
drivers came into the country, right, wrong, or indifferent, and they were paid willing to take a lower rate to get their foot
Yep.
into the industry and to make money. As they leave, less capacity, and drivers who are remaining are going to want and require and demand higher
Yeah.
wages.
Right. Exactly. No, I
And
completely agree.
and to your point with your grandma or whatnot, our friends and family, they don't understand why
No.
the costs are going up. So you try to
Yeah.
explain that to them, and it's a little bit more to
Well, of course,
understand.
shippers too, they don't want to it's interesting because shippers don't really want to do a lot of the like, they wanna have their profit margins stay the same,
Well,
right? No matter
sure,
what's going on in the
sure.
industry, no matter how capacity is, their profit margins need to stay the same. They will make sure that happens. And so, it's funny whenever Sean Duffy was saying that, like, keeping the shippers accountable. I'm like, "Good luck," because there's a
Yeah.
lot of them that like we were mentioning before, like, even, like, a high value freight, like, they're putting $1,000,000 on a trailer, and they won't spend $40 on a tracker. It's like, they're not doing I
They're
promise you they're not doing a lot of things that they should be doing or they,
well, sure. I mean,
want them to do.
you're right. I mean, some shippers, they don't record the who's picking it up. Do you have a
Yeah.
picture of the truck? Do you have a copy of the driver's license? Well, they could all be fake, right? But they just don't do that. And
No.
we both know shippers are always late to the game when it comes to a price increase, right?
Mhm.
And they're first when they want something, reduced a little bit. But as a broker to a shipper, that's where you kind of got to be a supply chain consultant
Yeah.
instead of just a, hey, do you have any loads today? That's like,
Yeah.
look, let me just keep you in tune with what's going on in the industry. Here's some current news, some current events. I'm not asking for any freight. I don't want to move anything. I just want to keep you informed.
Yeah.
Here's what's going on. And then possibly having those conversations with the shipper. Again, I'm not asking for freight. I just want to make sure you're aware of what's going on.
Right.
And you got to educate
Educating.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was funny. I was on something and I'm like, I wish there was a shipper conference where we could teach them all these things, but then all the brokers would storm in and then the shippers would run off. So that would never happen, I feel like. But I'm hoping online platforms, like even potentially mine or whatever, can get to shippers or people can send it to them like, hey, this is what's going on. Even like cargo theft wise, like this is why it's so important to have a video camera here or to have a guard person. Just even like, as I was talking to CHP and they're like, even if it's a fake ID, if you were to scan the fake ID and the face matches at least, we have facial
Hmm.
recognition where we can find the guys, right? Like it doesn't really matter what the ID specifically says. So to me, it's kind of a no brainer. Just scan them at least.
Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
again, when you think about it, you're putting $100,000 plus on this truck, and you're letting it go. I think I saw an example one time where somebody said, "Oh, hey, we're at a conference. Here's this person. Here's this person. Great, you met. He seems like a good guy. Great. Can you unlock your phone and your wallet and hand it to him and leave the room? And he's
Yeah.
gonna bring it to your house. Nobody would do that,
Right. Right.
right?
Exactly.
But yet you'll put
But
hundred
you'll
thousand
do
dollars on a truck. Yeah,
yeah, exactly, and not check anything. Yeah, and I
yeah.
think honestly, that's gonna take a lot of the big guys, the big brokers kinda having conversations with shippers and redoing shipper contracts. Like, I was talking to, Nolan Transportation, actually at
Hmm.
Cargo or Carrier, and they were talking about, like, just, like, they got hit really bad with cluster theft. And so, they were talking about, like, renegotiating their contracts with their shippers where, hey, kind of putting in place, like, you guys need to do inventory X amount of times and we're only being liable for this because even like cluster theft, that's difficult to say if it was actually the shipment that's happened when you're not doing inventory for 9 months or it's
Well,
somebody in
sure.
the warehouse stealing things, right? Like, how can you blame that on me when you have no idea?
Right, right. Yeah,
Right.
well, that's the thing too, so the bill of lading says 24 pallets and it gets there and now and it's been changed, doctored, now it's 20 pallets, right? And it's like, well, okay, who's doing the cycle counts? When are they doing the cycle counts? What's the inventory? And you know what? They get away with it so much that 24 turns into one,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's wild to me whenever a full truckload shows up with one thing. You're like, that's not a question for the dock workers, but either like just dock workers don't make enough and they just don't care, honestly, or they're
Yeah.
not educated.
Yeah, yeah, and or maybe that shippers experience some opportunities in their logistics department. They've shipped one pallet before, so it's
Yeah.
it's you know
So with your company, do you guys kind of do the same thing where like we were just talking about with educating shippers and talking to shippers? Is that kind of like an initiative that you guys push with your agents to have those conversations with their shippers?
Yeah, absolutely. So with us being an agent-based model, we educate the agents. Here's what's going on, and then we equip them with information that they can then send to their customer or share with their customer over the phone call, right?
Yeah.
And we send out a market conditions report every week, and in
Oh,
that
cool.
market conditions report, it talks about rate trends, it talks about capacity trends, it talks about theft trends. So we have the graphics, but then we also have links to different articles to where there should be some type of substance that you can have a conversation with your customer about and educate them and show that, hey, listen, we're kind of in this industry together with them. So we want to be, again, a supply chain
Yeah.
consultant, not just a freight broker to them.
And honestly, sales wise, I think people buy from people, right? And like if I'm buying from a logistics expert because they know what's going on, I
Mhm.
would have more trust in them than I would just somebody not giving me any information. So I think it's a win-win to be the one that can educate the shippers and suggest the pallet trackers and all those type of things. And I think even in contracts with like pallet trackers, like, hey, if I'm shipping X value and you don't have this in there, if something happens, I'm only X amount liable or whatever, because that's happening now too. Or hey, I'll supply you with the pallet trackers when for this type of shipment, but if you don't put it in, that's on you. And I know
Oh,
that's happening
absolutely.
too.
Yeah, I mean, we've even had shippers who aren't our shipper reach out to us
Oh,
because
really?
somebody else that they knew, a friend of theirs who at another shipper or whatever, said, "Hey, check with those guys. They helped me out in a situation. They might be able to help you out." So I'll get emails sometimes. I'll get phone calls. Hey, Mark, I'm XYZ customer. We don't work with you, but I've got this situation. How did you find it for this person? Or how did and that's great. I mean, it helps.
Yeah. So whenever like a cargo theft does happen, I'm assuming you guys have a process in place. But I guess what is your process, if you can touch on that, and how do you educate your team on kind of like role playing on be prepared for if this happens, first steps, next steps, that type of thing.
Yeah, so as you know, there's so many different things that can happen at once, right? But the initial assessment is, okay, when's the last time we had eyes on a load? Do we have anything at the pickup? Do we have a police report filed?
Yeah.
So it's the information gathering stage, and a lot of stuff's happening, in parallel, right?
Yeah.
So hey, I need you to talk to the shipper and get all this information. What's going on? Do they have cameras, pictures, photos, anything at all? Right? I need a manifest. I need anything you can give me about that, all the load value type of stuff. Okay, is a police report filed? Who's filed it? Where they at? What's going on? Let's get it over to CargoNet. Let's report it to them right away so we get their
Mm,
their full capability, those resources in. We'll try everything we can to reach out to the potential bad actor and look for anything like that. I'm connected with a few different brokers, and I'll reach out to the my side group of brokers, and you guys hear about any of this type of stuff, and I get a lot of feedback from that group. We're
yeah.
pretty active and works well. That's something that I think this cargo theft that we've been experiencing in the industry the last few years has really helped. Years ago, when I was much younger, it was, hey, we're not really going to share too much information. We're going to hold everything
Right.
close to our vest. Not so much now because everything is so bad. We've got active chats, groups, communications, and we share a lot of different information because you know what? If we can all work together and reduce this cargo theft, it helps. But to get back to your question, so it's the information gathering stage, getting the authorities in,
Hmm.
and then, do we have a tracker on it? And there's different things you can do. You can get a private detective if that's something you can do.
Yeah.
And there's different people in the industry that you can reach out to who can help you too.
Well, I think even after the fact, because I have a lot of people reaching out to me, kind of giving me stories after the fact, which is great because like you said, there's that network and that sharing, and that's really where either like I get the information and I can pick and choose what all I share out there in the world because like if it's a brand new thing, a lot of times I don't like to talk about it just only internally and see if we can, build things to detect things without telling. Sometimes we're doing a lot of stuff on our side that we're not telling customers. Like, hey, we have these detections on the backside. We're shutting people down on the back end, but we're not going to proactively tell customers because unfortunately, a lot of brokers give them the handbook. Like, hey, I'm not loading you
Right.
because you have XYZ wrong with you. And you're like, shut up. We just
Do
built
not,
that.
yes, do not say that, right? Just don't say it.
Yeah, please. Yeah. You don't need to
Yeah,
say everything. Just say you can't work with them and move on. I mean, what are you gonna do? Hurt their feelings? Have to hang up on them? It's like, you hang up on plenty of people when they give you a high enough rate, right? Like, it's
right.
not that big of a deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we tell the agents to listen. If the carrier has questions, just send them over to the compliance group. We'll
Yeah.
take care of it from there, right?
Yeah, and sometimes
Don't
like, I know Dale Prax is good about, like, if they have,
He
like,
is.
if they're not very
Yeah,
validated, then he'll do a lot of educational pieces, but, if they're very combative, like, I know immediately, like, "No, I'm
yeah,
not doing this with you, have a good one, because 'cause
yeah.
I'm not."
Dale's a pretty good guy. I like him too.
Yeah, he's doing some great things, especially with, government-wise. I think he just met with FMCSA yesterday or something down in Florida. Cool things are happening with him helping, and that's kind of what I think it's gonna take is everybody reaching out and kind of bombarding the government and being like, "Hey, help." On the other hand too, though, I'm big on, like, I don't like a lot of government being involved,
That's
so I think
yeah,
we're gonna be at a fine line, like, we all are begging for help, but I don't wanna give almost like after 9/11, how we had, what is it called, the Freedom Act or whatever, or
Patri is it Patriot
Patriot
Act?
Act. Yes, you're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like we all wanted it at that point, like help us, but then now we're like, oh, crap, we should have read the fine print. So I hope we
That's
don't get into
always
the
read the
same
fine
situation.
print. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
yeah.
And that's kind of where I was alluding to earlier. Once we get the government in, is that really what we
Hmm.
want? But we do need some type of support from them right now.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think we're getting some the help that we need. Like we need the enforcement on when they catch somebody, so it is an actual crime, not like a slap on the wrist. I think what's if that happens, the rest of it, hopefully they don't get too much more involved, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. Well, like Scott was talking about at Scott Cornell at one of the conferences, probably all of his conferences. But, nowadays, if somebody gets busted and they get arrested, they'll just have another group there that comes in and they start back up tomorrow.
Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate all your wisdom and all your things, and I'm sure you'll come on here again. How about why don't we wrap up with like how everybody can reach you and if they want to learn more
Yeah,
about
well, sure,
SPI and
absolutely.
all that
First of
jazz?
all, again, thanks for having me on it. I enjoy it. It's a great time. I enjoy your show. As far as reaching out to me, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I have a lot of people who reach out to me there. I'm always available that way. You can also reach out to me with SPI at our corporate office. Always available to help, even if it's someone that we're not working with.
Awesome, love it. All right, everybody, tune in next week.